This is going to be a different video from the ones that I usually do because I'm going to be talking to you guys for the first time. When I first started my lock journey, in my first video, you guys can watch that as well, I started off with locks that were kind of the width of a marker, and honestly, at first I was okay with it. I wanted like thicker locks and lush, like long, thick locks, and I had this grand image in my head about how it would look once they matured. But after I got maybe 3 to 4 weeks in, that first month, I just wasn't feeling it, and I was like researching all of these videos on how to pick your lock size, what was the greatest lock size for me. And I don't have a loctician, I do all of my lock maintenance myself. So I was really struggling with trying to figure out if I wanted to make my locks bigger or if I wanted to make my locks smaller. So around like a month and like a weekend, like the first week of like my second month marker, I buckled down. I was like, you know what, we're gonna make my locks smaller. I go in and I had all of my parts like laid out to a T, like all staggered. They were perfect. It took me literally 12 hours to do my staggered parting, which it probably shouldn't have taken that long, but you know, that's just how it happens. So I went through and I ended up splitting each of my parts in half down the middle. So just straight in half, and I retwisted all of them. And I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm cool with this. After I finished, I was like, I'm cool. And my hair was not locking at all at that point. Like it was still loose. Like I was still waiting for my hair to start budding. So yeah, that night that I split all of my locks, I was like, you know what, I'm content, it's fine, we're good. So the very next day, I started getting cold feet again. And I just started freaking out. I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna take forever for me to do. What happens when I have to wash my hair? Because my hair texture at the crown of my head is really, really, really loose. And it's still taking just a little bit longer for the two-strand twist pattern to kind of diminish. But it took really long for me to actually lock that section of my hair. So I had made these twists smaller, and I was like, dang, when I wash my hair, it's gonna be unraveling, because it was already unraveling with my marker size twist, my original locks. So I was like, or my original starter locks. So I was like, I don't know if I wanna do this. And then I had this back and forth of like, how am I gonna maintain them? How am I gonna keep them? I have to wash my hair. And I was just stressing out. I decided that very next day that I was going to go back and retwist my starter set from the halves back into the original size that I had in the beginning. But I didn't like comb them out. Like I didn't comb out the little mini twists. I ended up twisting the twists that I had already made. I'll see if I can insert some photos. So I ended up twisting the mini twists back into their original twist, and it kind of looked like this double helix thing going on. It was just ridiculous, but I was stressing out so much, and I was like trying to consult different people, like what should I do? What should I do? Do I want to keep them long or keep them thick and not have the option to make them smaller once they lock? Because once they lock, they're locked. That's it. If I want to do something else, I'm gonna have to cut it off or comb it out, and honestly, I don't think combing it out is worth it. I'd rather just shave it off. So I was like, after I had retwisted them all back into the original size, I was like, okay, we're good. I'm fine. But I wasn't. So I want to say maybe my 2.5 month marker hit, and I just was itching. I was like, I can't do this. I don't know what I want to do with the size of my locks. So I decided that I was gonna go through again and split every other lock in half. So I went through and I would go, okay, I'm gonna keep this lock the same size. This lock, I'm gonna split in half. This lock, same size. This lock, I'm gonna split in half. And I just did that all the way through. And it ended up working out because since I did my parts on my own, which they were pretty straight for someone who did it by themselves who can't see the back of their head. But some of them were just like had a little bit more hair than the other. So when I ended up splitting every other section, it ended up looking pretty cohesive. And all the sizes were almost the same. I do have some that are like a little smaller, a little bit thicker than each, but I like that it's kind of unique in that way, and I didn't want anything too neat. The further I got to my journey, I realized I didn't really care about my grid. But yeah, so I ended up going through splitting all of those locks, splitting some of those locks. So yeah, now I am almost 5 months in. I'll be 5 months on the 29th of this month, and I am good. There's no going back now. Like I can't split them. I can't untwist them. Like these boys they're in the teenage phase of maturing. So for those of you who are struggling with your lock size and trying to figure out what is a good fit for you and what's a good size for you to proceed with in your lock journey, I have just a couple of tips that helped me in the long run, but I wish I would have just consulted myself on before. My first tip is you have to consider the maintenance of your hair. So I have more traditional sized locks. They're not very small, but they're also not very big. It's kind of just that in between. So one of the ways I've been maintaining my locks is interlocking, and I think I'm gonna continue to use interlocking. I've also done like retwisting, like just the palm rolling, but I usually just do that to keep my stray hairs that are actually on the lock in place. So yes, maintenance. The bigger your locks are, I don't want to say the less maintenance, but it's a less tedious process versus you having sister locks or micro locks, where you are most likely going to be retying or interlocking your hair to keep your lock intact and tight, and to minimize that new growth, that look, if you aren't going for like a freeform look. So yes, that's something to keep in mind. I definitely struggled with that because when I split all of my locks, I was like, oh shoot. And at that point I counted them, I had like 160 locks, and I was like, I don't know if I want to interlock 160 locks on my head. And they were really small, and I was just really concerned about the tension on my head, and I wanted to make sure that the integrity of my locks were intact, so I didn't want to compromise anything. The second tip that I have in terms of deciding on your lock size is considering styling. So for traditional locks, I'd say that I'm kind of in an in-between on that spectrum of extremely versatile to extremely limited. So I can do a lot of styles, but I wouldn't be able to do as many styles as someone who has micro locks or sister locks, where the locks are much smaller and almost mimics your natural hair, like loose natural hair. And then for someone who has thick locks, like I want to say maybe like 60 and under locks, in terms of their count, that's where your locks end up looking a little bit thicker, which you can still do a lot of styles with thicker locks, but not as many as you would or could with micro locks or sister locks. So it really all depends on how much versatility you want, and just what you're looking for in the long run, what you want your locks to look like in the long run. For me, I wanted versatility, so I think I'm satisfied with the size that I have, because it's small enough to where I don't feel like my scalp is just showing like way too much, but they're thick enough to where I'm like, okay, that's cute, like I can keep it. I got a little something, I got a little hang time, but I'm not like concerned about my locks falling out because of how small they are, or them being too thick and me not being able to maintain them, or them looking just not to my liking. My third tip is to consider your hair density. So for example, I have pretty average density. My hair isn't really too thick, it's not too thin. I'm kind of in that good in between. So let's say someone were to have 50 locks in their head and they had really thick hair, versus someone else having 50 locks in their head and they have a really thin hair. Their locks, the overall appearance of their locks between the both of them is going to be drastic, just because of the genetic makeup of their hair, the volume and the thickness of each of their strands, and how many hair follicles they have per cubic inch. So that's something to consider. Maybe just do, like, if you are deciding to start locks, maybe just play around with sizing in the back. Like, do a small one, do like a thicker one, do like an in-between, and kind of see how you're liking the size and how it looks and how much actual hair you're using to create that lock in the long run. Because that's definitely going to change the appearance of your hair. If you don't like your scalp showing, then you gotta like kind of maneuver and find that perfect lock size for you and your hair density. The last tip is uber important, and it's something that I am still combating, trying to like defeat, but it's do not compare your locks to other people's locks. I watch so many YouTubers, countless YouTubers, and just researching different lock journeys, lock maintenance, and just everything revolved around the world of having your hair locked. And you start like fantasizing and idolizing these women who have these beautiful long luscious locks, and that is very specific to them, and they wear it well because it is only theirs. So you really have to embrace your own lock journey, and just because Sally Mae has these thick locks, that might not work for you, you know, and you've got to kind of find your own way. And that's the beauty of the lock journey, because you are discovering yourself and also discovering your hair. And it's all a process. There's no like stopping point. Like you're not gonna reach a point where you're like, all right, this is it, I'm done. Like even people who are in 10 years into their lock journey are still in their lock journey, and their hair is still changing. So you've just got to discover those things for yourself, but take time and be grateful and appreciative of all of those little moments, the good, the bad, the because I've had but yeah, I think those are my top 4 tips for those of you who are wanting to have a better idea on how to refine and just hone in on that one lock size. I hope this was really helpful for you guys. I'm gonna try and be more consistent with my videos. I know I've been slacking off a little bit. There's just a lot of stuff going on with this COVID. But yes, I hope to see you guys in the next one.